We met at the entrance of death. Our love in jail wasn't meant to be, but wonders do happen. Because how else can you describe this miraculous marriage of the two former prisoners, of whom one had a death penalty?
Kwanza mfungwa wa kunyongwa haruhusiwi kufanya shughuli yoyote gerezani.
This is an incredible story.
Mimi nilifahamu akiwa ni bado mahabusu, akiwa hajahukumiwa bado.
This is Muhamedi Abubakari Oluto.
Kwa majina naitwa Muhamedi Abubakari Oluto.
He is 50 years old.
Kwa majina naitwa Rose Onamale.
And this is his wife, Rose.
Nina umri wa miaka 28.
The couple shares 2 children and lives together in Tanzania.
Na mimi?
It would not be an exaggeration to say that this happy family wasn't meant to be in the first place. Oluto's wife was supposed to die. And that's right, she was meant to die after a court sentenced her with the death penalty.
Wakati mimi napata matatizo nilikuwa na umri wa miaka 18.
Oluto's case was no different as well. He wasn't going to be killed, but his 30 years prison sentence was no joke at all.
Unajua kesi na ile mahakamani hawaangalii kitu kingine, wanaangalia wanasemaje wale wahusika. Basi hatimaye ushahidi ukaja na nikafungwa kifungo cha miaka 30 gerezani.
So, how did Oluto and his wife meet in prison? How were their sentences overturned? And why do they seem this happy together? Today, we have visited this remarkable family whose love defied all odds, and the two are living the happiest moments of their lives, something that was unimaginable just a couple of years ago. We are in central regions of Tanzania in a town called Moshi, which is located some 80 kilometers east of Arusha city. We are warmly welcomed by Mr. Oluto and his beautiful wife, Rose. We are visiting them to hear one of the most impossible love stories you will ever hear. The two of them knew each other when they were in jail. Mr. Oluto was sentenced to 30 years in prison, even though he didn't commit any crimes. It all started with his former girlfriend. In his youth, Mr. Oluto had a girlfriend he treated like a diamond, and the two were living a happy life in Moshi. But the couple's cheerful love didn't last long, as the two quarreled over different things and chose to go their separate ways, after Oluto had protested to sleep with his girlfriend. Their separation, however, wasn't an ending in itself, but rather a curse to Oluto's life. His girlfriend moved on and managed to find another boyfriend whom they married. And on this particular wedding day, Oluto's life changed forever.
Siku ya harusi yao kidogo kulitokea vurugu.
On their wedding day, there was some riots and chaos, and they said I'm the one who initiated the whole thing in a bid to harass my former girlfriend and to spoil her wedding day. They said I did it because she was my former girlfriend and that I still wanted her. What seemed to be a small chaotic scene at a certain wedding ceremony quickly turned into a big plot of an organized crime that involved armed robbery. Before he knew it, Oluto was already in custody, and his carelessness vanished when he knew that his sentence would be a whopping 30 years imprisonment. The young man, who was yet to fully comprehend the danger he was in, started to fight back vigorously, but his efforts to turn the sentence were futile. I served my sentence in Karanga Moshi prison. For the next 20 years, Oluto's future was going to be uncertain. His long sentence also meant he was going to serve in different prisons. He started his sentence from Karanga Moshi prison from 1997 to 2002. He was then transferred to other prisons including Manewi Tanga prison, Ukonga Dar es Salaam prison, Arusha Kizongo prison, before coming back to Karanga Moshi prison.
Nalifanya jitihada za kuweza kutoka katika hali ile.
I tried my very best to leave jail, because when you're in jail, you try to appeal to the higher courts. I remember that I appealed to the Moshi Higher Court after being sentenced by the Moshi Intermediate Court. His desperate appeals fell to deaf ears. Instead, both of his parents and one of his siblings died. The tragedy of not accompanying his family members at their very last moment on earth still haunts him today. As Mr. Olutu's efforts to turn his sentence were yet to get any tangible results, he focused on other things. He had acquired some medical skills before coming to the prison, so he always joined medical teams in every prison he served in, working as an assistant to doctors who would not stay in prison since they were not prisoners. In their absence, especially during nights, he would be in charge of sick prisoners. He was also entrusted to govern his fellow prisoners, and he has done so in almost every prison he served in. You might think he was somehow privileged, but this is far from the truth. Olutu said he never got used to prison life. I was a leader, and a leader in prison has an advantage in different ways, but I never got used to prison life. But Olutu chose to persevere through it all and serve his fellow prisoners unconditionally. It was one afternoon when Olutu was accompanying a patient to the prison hospital. As his team was rushing through, he naturally glanced at the other far end of the prison's ward, only to see a brown, tall girl walking alone, and you could sense a lot of misery in her face. And miserable she was. This brown girl was waiting the implementation of her death penalty, and she had been in prison since she was 18 years old. The pair would continue to meet under different circumstances, sometimes at the hospital, in courts, or during praying sessions. They then started to greet each other casually, but Olutu was sure his heart had already appreciated this girl, only that their conditions were not favorable for such a thing. We knew each other from those casual meetings. We started to greet each other. She would be with female security guards, and we would greet each other, talk to each other. But we were not so familiar to each other. That's how the idea of a relationship started. It took a while before Olutu realized that Rose was given a death penalty, and when he finally acknowledged, his heart sank. The first time I saw her, I never thought the court has given her death penalty. I just thought she's imprisoned, but yet to be sentenced. When I realized that the court has given her a death penalty, I became extremely sad. On her side, Rose was deeply saddened by the court's verdict, especially that she knew nothing of the cause of her detention.
Kitu ambacho cha kwanza kabisa nilihisi kama maisha yangu ndo yameishia pale.
When I heard that the court gave me a death penalty, she said, I felt like my life is just done. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. I felt deep sadness I have never had before, and I would remember that I actually don't know what brought me here. It was a very difficult time I went through. As a prisoner who was sentenced to death, it was very difficult for Olutu to know what's going on with Rose. The time of her sentence was not clearly known, and her whereabouts would shift all the time. But Rose's case was delayed as she was given a chance to appeal, and her relationship with Olutu resumed as the two kept sharing information. When Rose was about to hear the final verdict on her case, Olutu managed to travel to court at Arusha to hear what was going to happen to his crush. By that time, I managed to go there when they were pronouncing her final verdict. They decided to release her. When the verdict concluded for her release, I knew that. His wife, Rosa, is 28 and the third child among her 7 siblings. The blissful Rose was doing her 4th year in secondary school when she found herself in a fatal situation that landed her in jail and almost cost her life.
Yalitokea hapa mkoani Kilimanjaro.
She was in Kilimanjaro and took a motorist, as many people in Africa do for their short journeys. The motorist transported her to her destination and then met a gang a few hours later, who took his motorcycle and beat him so badly. The motorist later succumbed to the injuries, and Rose was asked about it. That's how she got in jail in 2012. She vividly remembers the day the police broke into her family's house looking for her. I remember it very well. It was around afternoon, and the police came to take me with a car. They asked my name and told me that I am needed at the police station. When I got there, they explained to me that I was accused of causing injuries to a motorist. By then, he was still in the hospital, but his health had deteriorated very badly. I tried to explain myself and explained how he transported me to my final destination, and after I offered my explanation, they told me that they would call me when they needed me, and so I left the station. After 2 days, they came back and took me again. That's when my life changed forever. The motorist was still able to talk by that time, and he informed the police that he was attacked by 2 young males, and he never said that he saw me among people who attacked him, but the police didn't care much. They jailed me, saying that I have a connection with the attackers, and I was carried to the prison. By then, my crime was causing injuries to the motorist. After some 18 days, the motorist died, and they came over and took me to the central prison. The name of my crime was also changed and became murder, which didn't have any bail. The investigation lasted 2 years, and that's when I started to get in front of the High Court of Moshi. The date of hearing my verdict was changed a couple of times until one day in 2015 when they finally said that I will be killed. It was something difficult to comprehend. It was incredibly difficult to handle. On the day of hearing my verdict, my brother was present. After hearing her verdict, Rose started a very long journey to await her final day in which her punishment would be executed. As a prisoner with a unique punishment, her life was different from her prison mates. She was living in a solitary cell, and thus she was transferred to a designated prison called Izanga Dodoma from Karanga Moshi. By then, she was only 18 years old, and she was brutally depressed. She felt that her life was simply done, and she couldn't do anything else to save herself. What crushed her heart even more is the fact that she didn't commit the crime she was accused of. In all that agony, praying to God was her only consolation.
Kwa siku ya kwanza,
My first day in jail was incredibly difficult. It was a very tough life. The sentence itself was traumatizing. First of all my former friends distanced themselves from me. I had to be jailed in a solitary cell, and I was transferred to Izanga Dodoma jail, which houses people whose sentences are lifetime or to be killed. When I got there, I saw other women like me. I saw other young girls, and I started to get used to that kind of life, even if it was impeccably difficult to understand, especially to a young girl like me who had big dreams. The problems I had were extremely many, and I can say all of them. Even to be called a prisoner or a murderer is something really bad. To live while knowing that you might die anytime someone decides about it, it's something beyond normal understanding. Rose remembers the day she met with Muhammadi back in the days when the two were still in jail. She was yet to be sentenced and found Muhammadi taking care of sick prisoners who he was in charge of.
nakumbuka tulikuwa tayari tumeshatoka kwenye
I remember that we had gone out of the court. He asked for permission to come and greet us, and we were accompanied by a female guard. He asked me my name, and I told him my name. He asked me the crime I am accused of, and I replied, and he kept asking me a lot of questions about my dossier. At last, he told me to be calm, since I don't seem to have committed the crime I'm accused of. He told me to keep praying to God, and I was incredibly strengthened by his words. I used to see him very rarely afterwards. Sometimes he would be walking with a doctor, and I could see him since I was in the main prison before I got into solitary prison. Later on, I came to suffer in my chest, and I didn't have the medicine. And when he was walking with a doctor, he brought me a medicine. It was something amazing he did for me, and I can never forget it in my whole life. Our relationship in jail was almost impossible because male live in their own halls and we live in different places. Even if you love a man, you can only watch him in the far corner. But whenever there was a possibility, he used to strengthen me. He also helped me a lot in my daily needs since my home time was way too far from his place, so they could not have the capabilities to visit me every time. The worst thing I will never forget was to see a prisoner who was seriously sick until the day he died. By then, he was buried by the prison authority. Her family would only be informed about her passing and receive her belongings, including some clothes. That's when I realized that if I die in jail, my family might not be able to see my body. I always prayed to God that in case I died, my family should be able to bury me. What pained her the most was the realization that he might not be able to do certain things. As people who are waiting a death penalty, she was incredibly protected with high-end guards and equipment. She was released after spending 6 years and 1 day in jail, and her misery and struggles vanished the same day. She is also very mindful of people who helped her, especially people in authorities who wanted her case to be resolved pretty quickly.
Nakumbuka nikiwa gereza la Isanga Dodoma.
I remember when I was still in Dodoma Izanga prison, there came the minister in charge of internal affairs, who was called Mwegulu Mchemba. I explained my case to him and he cried. He cried because I was very young and I was a female and my sentence was way too extreme. Then came the Prime Minister and I explained my case to him. He was called Kasim Majaliwa. He saw me leading the prayer and asked about my case, then ordered the prison's lawyer to follow up on me. I want to take this opportunity to thank him. I don't know if he remembers it, but if he listens to it, if he can see me, he has to know that I thank him so much. Back when I was young, and now I am more mature. I wish to meet him someday. If he listens to me, I wish to meet him. It became clear back in 2017 that Rose committed no crime and her penalty was reversed, as the court ordered for her immediate release. When she returned home, her relationship with Olutu became serious. On his side, Olutu has been fighting for his release since he had never committed any crime. Helped by lawyers from the Pan-African Lawyer Union, Olutu presented his case to the African Court on Human and People's Rights, which Tanzania had just joined. The court's resolution came into his favor.
Nilishinda kwamba mahakama za Tanzania zilifanya makosa kunifunga mimi.
I won the case. The court decided that the Tanzanian justice system made massive mistakes when they jailed me. It was around 2015 and 2016. Her passion is acting in movies. Tanzania is one of the few countries in Africa where the movie industry is incredibly big. And Maureen's dream is to make her own movie. She has acted in 8 movies so far, and she wishes to channel her story through the films. Her husband was released in 2017 and immediately started the process to marry Rose. Their wedding was a miraculous gift to themselves, as they shared wedding cake and celebrated together with families and friends. It was a joyful experience to see how this couple's love has not diminished. They do everything together. When Rose is preparing food in the kitchen, her husband will be playing with their 2 beautiful children in the living room and helping his wife whenever it's needed. Rose was proud when she told us how it feels to be called a mother, and she admits to love her husband indefinitely. The couple is now focused on raising their children, Nazra and Naifati. The two of them have developed a passion for visiting prisoners, especially those who are barely visited, and bring them necessary equipment they need. You can talk to them via these contacts in our comments section, and you can help them build their lives via givinglife.com to help them visit as many prisoners as possible, especially those who have urgent needs of different things, from lawyers to other life necessities. Story by Francis Robert Jacob. Thanks for watching. This is Afrimax English. Please remember to subscribe.